Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Clinton Presidential Center's event, Commander-in-Chief with Rod Lurie. This program is in conjunction with our temporary exhibit, Commanding the Screen, the American Presidency in Film and Television, which will close on March 31st. The Clinton Presidential Center Presents series is a collaborative effort between the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton School of Public Service, and the University of Arkansas, and the Clinton Presidential Library and Museum. I am Stephanie Sims Mason, the Supervisory Museum Curator for the William J. Clinton Presidential Library and Museum. In August, we launched an exclusive temporary exhibit titled Commanding the Screen, the American Presidency in Film and Television. This exhibit invites visitors to explore cinematic portrayals of fictional and real-life presidents and reflect on how these depictions represent America's spirit, values, and historical journey. It features original costumes, authentic props, and other memorabilia from various films and television shows. During the planning stages, we discussed various themes and subject matters, and the topic of female presidents emerged as particularly significant. It was essential to highlight that this leading lady does not have to be the first lady, but can be the commander-in-chief. Notable roles included in the exhibit are Mellie Grant, played by Bellamy Young in the television series Scandal, Selena Myers, portrayed by Julia Louis-Dreyfus in Veep, and Elizabeth McCord, played by Tay Leone in Madam Secretary. Tonight, we will learn more about the origin of Mackenzie Allen, played by Geena Davis. Tonight's program, moderated by award-winning political consultant Michael Cook, will feature a conversation with Rod Lurie, a director, screenwriter, showrunner, West Point graduate, and a proud father. Mr. Lurie will discuss the creation and portrayal of the fictional President Mackenzie Allen in the series Commander-in-Chief, and the development of the film The Contender, which starred Joan Allen as vice presidential nominee Laine Hanson. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge Dr. Jay Barth, director of the William J. Clinton Presidential Library and Museum, and any other dignitaries who may join us this evening. We sincerely thank you for participating in tonight's event. We hope you find the discussion both enlightening and enjoyable. Thank you very much.
Right. So cool. I'm at the Clinton Presidential Library. That is really great. That is, hi, everybody.
Thank you for being here, Rod.
Sure.
Thank you all for being here. It's good to see
Absolutely.
some friends in the audience as well. I'm Michael Cook. As mentioned, I'm a political consultant, but I'm also a film critic on Channel 4 and Channel 16. So for me, this is exciting. It's the intersection of politics and movies, two things that I love talking about all the time. When I was researching Rod's very impressive career, I learned he started as a film critic.
Right.
And I can tell you, being a film critic, it's easy to kind of denigrate movies and talk about how bad they were. But one story stood out to me, Rod. I've not shared this with you. Is he was a film critic for newspapers, but also for a major Los Angeles radio station. And at the time he was on the air in the 90s, there was a small independent film that he just loved that really wasn't getting a lot of play. And they were worried that it might get pulled from the theaters in LA. So he went on the air and told all his listeners, go see this movie. It's amazing. You're just going to love it. And that movie was Sling Blade, directed by Arkansan Billy Bob Thornton. So thank you for...
Well, Actually, what happened was that I really loved this film, and I said specifically, guys, audience, I had the #1 show in LA, and I said, it's playing in so-and-so theater in Santa Monica. I want this damn thing sold out. We got to save this movie. So even if you got plans, cancel them. I want lines out the door, and that's what happened. They had lines out the door. And then they expanded the film to 2 theaters. We did it next week and the week after that. And then Billy Bob came on my show, and he was appropriately grateful. But I'll tell you this: I said to Billy Bob, Billy Bob, you know you're going to win the Oscar for the screenplay, right? And he goes, well, I don't know that. And I go, oh, you're going to win. Don't you worry. And he said to me, no, I don't think so. I said, I'll make you a bet. If you do not win the Academy Award, not nominated, win the Academy Award, I will do the Billy Bob Got Screwed Hour on my show. But if you win, you got to thank me at the Oscars. And he said, you got a deal. Now, I did the same thing with Martin Landau for Ed Wood, Mel Gibson for Braveheart, James Cameron for Titanic. If you go tonight on YouTube and look at Mel Gibson winning the directing award, he thanks me. Landau thanks me. James Cameron thanked me when he won director. Billy Bob screwed me. He's from here, right?
He's from Arkansas, Malvern, Arkansas.
Oh, man.
That's why I brought it up.
Oh, man. By the way, go Razorbacks. I love watching. I love watching them. I always root for Army. If Army plays Arkansas, I'll root for Army. Otherwise, I got your back. Can I ask I want to ask the sign language lady a question. Can I ask you a question? Do you also sign curses? If I curse, will you sign that too? Okay, good. Because it may happen a couple of times tonight. All right, very good.
That's awesome.
But I want to see what you do when you do it. I want to see how to curse in the play. I'm trying to learn it in every language. Okay, all right.
That's great. That's great. Well, let's talk about your filmography.
By the way, just one more thing. I'm sorry.
No.
I know you gave a really good review to my movie, The Outpost, and I thank you. But I have a feeling if I go back and research, that you've probably given me hell a couple of times too.
You had a phrase when there's a movie no, I think I've given all your movies good reviews now because
I don't think so. I got a feeling. We're going to check.
We'll check it out. But speaking of movies, the first two movies you ever directed, Deterrence, which starred Kevin Pollak,
right,
and then of course The Contender, which we'll talk about, which starred Jeff Bridges and Joan Allen.
Yes.
Both of these movies dealt with the presidency.
Yes.
For your first two films as a new director,
yeah,
why did you choose movies that dealt with the presidency in form of action?
And my first short film dealt with who was Deep Throat. It was Bob Woodward being interviewed at a radio station. So they're all political. I grew up, my dad was the most successful political cartoonist of all time, most widely syndicated. He was a cartoonist for Newsweek, for Time, for Die Welt in Germany, for all the major newspapers in the world. And so politics was absolutely everywhere. And I didn't care for sports when I was a teenager. I do now. But I didn't care back then. And I would watch the presidential primaries like it was NFL Sunday. I just loved it so much. I bet you, who here is like a political junkie? Who would say that they enjoy? Yeah, it's just so cool, right? It's really, especially recently, it's really a blood sport. So I found it really fascinating. And I just loved it. And people aren't doing it we're not doing it that much. Used to be that they did it, but it interested me. And in particular, Deterrence was about it asked a question, what does it take to make a fascist? And no comment but also dealt with the first Jewish president. I'm Jewish, that was interesting. And the notion of a woman becoming a vice president or president was very important to me when I wrote The Contender. And so I was as interested in those topics as I was in the presidency itself. And Contender I wrote over a weekend because I was with the Los Angeles Magazine and ABC Radio, and I was giving, do you guys, when I say Joan Allen, do you guys know who that is? So she's on that show right now called Zero Day on Netflix. Anyway, I was giving her an award for Best Supporting Actress, and I said up on stage, I said, I should write a movie for Joan Allen, because if she does it, it'll be good. And in front of me were like all the biggest heavyweights in Hollywood. Bill Murray was there, Steven Spielberg was there, Mel Gibson was there, and Joan was there. And when I sat down, and she sat down, she said, why don't you write me a movie? And I said, really? And then her agent said, yeah, we'll consider it. So being naive and thinking I had my ticket, I went home, and I had my little girl, she was like 6 years old then, and George Bush had just announced he was going to run for the presidency. So she says to me, Daddy, how come no woman ever runs for president? And I said, it's a good question. I don't know. A lot of good women. And she said, how about if Mommy runs for president? And I said, Mommy, busy being Mommy right now. She's not interested. What about Grandma? And I said, Grandma's selling real estate in Greenwich, Connecticut and doing really well. So she doesn't want to do it. And then Paige, my little girl, she says to me, well, then I'm going to be the first woman president. And I told my then wife, excuse me, and I went downstairs, I turned on my computer, and I turned it off 48 hours later. I knew what I had to write. And I sent it to Joan, and I got a call 5 days later on the phone, and an Irish woman is speaking to me. She goes, I'm going to do it. And I said, great, who is this? She goes, it's Joan Allen. And she was in Ireland playing a role. She was in character. And that's how we got Joni to do it. And then I learned that no studio would spend $20 million on a movie starring Joan Allen and directed by Mr. Nobody. But they would let Mr. Nobody direct Sharon Stone or Michelle Pfeiffer, who both wanted to do it. And I thought Joan Allen was the best actor in the world. And I had to go find other people to be in the movie. And so I went to Paul Newman to play the President of the United States. I assume we all know who Paul Newman is, my favorite actor of all time. And Paul Newman said, I'm too old, not even going to open it. And I was told that somehow Jeff Bridges had read the script. Now, they invite me to go visit Jeff Bridges in Santa Barbara. How many people here have seen or heard of The Big Lebowski? Everyone, right? Okay. So I go to his house. It's 10 a.m. on a Saturday. I knock on the door, and he opens, and he's in his Big Lebowski outfit. Now, by that I don't mean a Big Lebowski-like outfit, Mike. He was in his Big Lebowski costume, literally the outfit. And he says, I know what you're thinking, but Lebowski was wearing my clothing. And he asks me, you want to drink something? So I'm a funny guy, so what do I say? What? White Russian. I said, I'll have a White Russian. No, I don't drink. I've never drank in my life. But Jeff says, good idea. He comes with 6 White Russians and 2 croissants. And throughout our 2-hour conversation, he consumed all the White Russians. He was drunk as a skunk when it was all done. He put his arm around me and he said, the dude as president, who'd have thought it? And next thing you know, a few months later, I'm shooting The Contender, and a year after that, we're all at the Oscars with Jeff nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Jeff and Joan both got nominated
yeah.
for Best Actor and Best Actress.
Yeah.
That's very impressive. Second film out of the gate, you got your actors some nominations.
That was good.
That's not bad.
It was good. Yeah, it was lovely.
Kind of, in the fabulous exhibit you all should take if you've not had a chance to see Commanding the Screen, there was one thing that stood out to me about the portrayal of presidents. Like, for example, according to the exhibit, Abraham Lincoln has been portrayed about 300 times on film or TV in some form or fashion. What is, kind of a twofold question, what is it about filmmakers that are so enamored or wanting to make films about presidents, and then why do audiences want to see them? Because obviously
why do filmmakers want to make a movie about the most powerful man on earth?
Yeah.
I think it's self-explanatory. He's the most, president can do anything, but it's also a place where we can vent, we can put out our frustrations, and we can make a movie about something that's really bothering us in general. And you see a lot of bad presidents, in the Clint Eastwood film Absolute Power. Gene Hackman plays a really bad president, and he's sort of stand-in for Nixon there. But sometimes we also look for aspiration. What do we want from our president? Like, can you guys just throw out names to me? Who's your movie presidents you really loved? Who's that? Kennedy. But a movie president. Harrison Ford in Air Force One. Bill Pullman, by the way, right? Yeah. Martin Sheen. So that's maybe the best example, right, sir? I mean, has there ever been a more aspirational president? Even Republicans wanted, President Bartlett to be their president. The West Wing presidency is what we aspire to. It's about as well. He definitely was a Democrat, but there was a bipartisan feel to that show. Republicans loved that show. The ratings would indicate as much as Democrats, and so we look to vent, and we look to aspire. And when you enter the Oval Office, it's something resplendent. I've built 6 maybe Oval Offices in my movies and TV shows now. And when I walk into the Oval Office in this building, that's also pretty cool. It just feels magical. And so I think it translates to the movies.
Sure. It's funny, speaking of Oval Office, there are people in this room that have actually been in the real Oval Office because they worked for Clinton or were friends with Clinton.
You're nodding. You've been in there?
Many a time.
What did you do why were you in the Oval Office?
We've been friends forever, and I did
With the Clintons?
Yeah, and I did a deal called the Arkansas Travelers, and we went all over the country for him.
So you're like a...
He was the officiant at our wedding.
Who was?
Bill.
What?
That's the beauty of being in Arkansas.
Why am I? You all know?
The Vaughts knew Clinton, so
That's really cool. What was your connection?
Well, I was a lawyer. I'm retired now, and I worked for him in the Attorney General's office here in Arkansas.
Why am I up here? I don't get it. Really? That's so cool. Wow. So I'd rather interview these guys.
Exactly. They have great stories.
Amazing.
But kind of a question to these people here, these people know what the Oval Office looks like or Air Force One looks like. So how do you get the details right on
Well,
all
I mean,
these things?
those are very much part of the public record. I mean,
Do you have consultants or on set or just do a lot of research?
No, we don't need a consultant to build the Oval Office. It's, the blueprints are very much there. But before I made all my presidential films, we went to Washington and met with actually a lot of people in the Clinton administration. Really helped us with my TV series called Commander in Chief with Geena Davis. Maybe you know some of these people like Sandy Berger was one of our consultants. Ron Klain, who became Chief of Staff to Biden, was one of our consultants. And Walter Dellinger, who was his Solicitor General, who just passed, was one of our consultants. So we have tons of consultants, but not for stuff like the building of an Oval Office.
Sure. Speaking of, kind of knowing people, let me ask you this. Have you ever known any past presidents or any dealings with current?
Not as well as these guys know the Clintons. I mean, I feel really sort of humbled here at this point. Well, I'll tell you what. Couple stories. My parents used to live in the Trump Tower, so I would ride the elevator with Donald Trump all the time. He was exactly the same guy then that he is now. And I was 1 year behind Barack Obama in high school. I didn't know him, but we dated the same girl. And I'm just saying, what she says, okay, never mind. I won't get into that. But I didn't know. But I went to a function in 2008 during the primaries, and I was choosing between Hillary and Obama. And Obama comes up to me and he goes, "Rod Lurie." He says, "Jeff Bridges, best movie president ever." And I said, "Really?" "Yeah." He said, "He was fucking great." Okay, thank you. Up here, it's this. Okay, got it. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, excellent. So he was fucking great. And I looked at him and I said, "You got my vote," you know. And you know, then I got to spend a little bit more time with him, and I really respected him. And he was Obama, before he was a candidate, was the inspiration for the Jimmy Smits character in the final year of West Wing. They based it on Obama, even before he was a candidate.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting.
Let me ask you this. You know, you talked about your bump in with Obama. With movies, how do you think movies have influenced presidents? And then how do you think presidents have influenced political movies?
Well, I mean, that's a really deep question in a way, because presidents create the mood of a country to a certain degree, and like I would say, during the Reagan era, the Ronald Reagan era, movies became all guns and no sex. In the 60s and 70s, a lot of sex in movies, okay, but not as many guns. Now you go into the Reagan era, and you got the Chuck Norris, Stallone, Schwarzenegger. You got all these films, and if you think about all the films those guys made, there's tons of guns being ablazing, and there's almost no sexuality in those films, you know, whatsoever, right? So he creates a mood in the country, which is, you know, very puritanical in some ways, but also very aggressive in certain ways. And I think that he definitely had an influence over the kinds of movies that were made. But I think that you look at something like The West Wing, and I think that it created behavioral patterns in some of our politicians. They looked at it and said, that's what the country responds to. I think Obama was very Bartlett-like. But not only that, some of the other candidates that started to come into the picture there, like John Edwards, for example, or even Paul Ryan, they tried to affect that kind of, you know, cordiality and homespunness with wisdom. I think that they were very inspired by the West Wing. Now, in our current time, I really don't know where this is taking us, like at all, and I'm quite serious, and I'll tell you what I mean. And I don't mean to be political at all, and I hope I don't offend anybody. If I do, please forgive me. It's not my intention. But in 2006, I was hired to write and direct a movie called State of the Union, which was a remake of a Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn film about a political campaign. And so I wrote a movie about a billionaire it was going to be Kevin Costner, who runs for, very much inspired by like Ross Perot. And he runs for office, and it's a crazy campaign, like stuff you've never seen before. And then after the Obama-Hillary primaries and then the Obama-McCain race, everyone said, well, you can't make a movie about a crazy campaign anymore. Nothing can get crazier than this campaign. And I said, yeah, we're totally dead now. And like, I don't know how dead and buried we are now, but it's I mean, like, there's like the last 3 campaigns have been so batshit and bananas that I don't think you can make a satire. You couldn't make Veep right now. Veep is real life, you know? The stuff that's going on, like, I mean, even the most ardent supporters of Trump have to say, like, to see Elon Musk up there with chainsaws and dressed the way that he is and coming to the cabinet meeting with his black hat on, it's crazy. I mean, if I wrote this in a script 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I would be kicked out of the room. Yeah. Saying you can't do stuff like this. And so it's really weird. So I have a script right now that I'm trying to get financed. If anybody here is really, really rich, let's talk. And the concept is, it's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, but set in the White House, It's a fight between a female president and her first gentleman. It's a blowout fight, like in Virginia Woolf. And it's like crazy stuff going on there, but not as crazy as what we have going on now. And I don't know that I'll be able to, I got good actors, but I don't know that I can get it made. It's weird.
Might be too tame compared to what we've.
It's
what
too
we've seen.
tame. Yeah, it's nothing. Right, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's crazy. It's bananas.
Yeah. You mentioned the time frame of 2006, and right around 2005 is when you created the Commander-in-Chief. Tell us about that process and how you came to have Geena Davis as president. Kind of give us some insight on.
Does anybody here know this show called Commander-in-Chief? Yeah, we did in 2000. It lasted one season, and it's. I would have assumed somebody had written a book about this because talk about a flame out.
But Donald Sutherland as Speaker of the.
Yeah, no. So I had a deal at ABC, and it was the fastest pitch I ever had. I went to the head of ABC, and I said, his name was Steve McPherson. I said, Steve, I'm going to give you a idea. Such an obvious idea that you're going to say yes after I say 3 words, and then let me get to work. And he goes, what is it? And I said, first female president. And he said, duh. Like, how come no one has thought of this? And he told me it's cast dependent. We had to get a great person to play the president. Geena was not available when we began. So I went and I met with Joan Allen, and I met with Sigourney Weaver, and they both wanted to do it, but they gave me rules that I couldn't abide by. They wanted to do 8 episodes. We needed 24, and they wanted to shoot in New York City, and I wasn't going to leave my family, or I would have to hand over the show. And so we couldn't make a deal with those 2 ladies. And then we had amazing people audition for the show. Linda Hamilton auditioned, I remember. Julia Ormond auditioned, I think. Elizabeth McGovern auditioned. We had really great people auditioning. And it was like a hot show to be on. It was ABC when television mattered. And people really liked the Contender. And then Geena's contract went away at CBS. And within 1 hour, she said yes. And so, so she came in, and man, that woman is a trooper. Like I told her in our first meeting that we're going to have scenes of her rowing on the Potomac. And next thing you know, she's out there getting lessons in the Pacific Ocean. And I told her, we're going to do 1 episode where you're going to be throwing out a first pitch at Baltimore Orioles. And she's out there training with the LA Dodgers. I mean, she really took it very, very seriously. And I tried to make she was an independent with Democrat leanings. The president who died before her was a Republican. But you can talk about why I didn't get her elected, why I handed it to her vis-a-vis the death of the president. But, and the show came out, and I remember I get a call early after it comes out that the show had beaten the World Series. We were the #1 show. The show was a huge success, massive. And all of a sudden, we were everywhere. And I'd never experienced anything like that in my life in any way, shape, or form. It was the highlight of my life, the success of this show. And the reviews were really good, too. Tom Shales of the Washington Post said it was the best show of the year. And, I mean, I'll share something with you guys. This is going to be on C-SPAN, though, right? By the way, can we somebody research what is the lowest rated show ever on C-SPAN and see if I'm going to beat that? Okay. Anyway, the show I'm on, I'm putting on my 7th show, and I get but the 3rd show has aired. It's remained #1. It's doing great. I'm at birthday dinner with my son and my daughter and my ex-wife, and I'm told that I'm being fired from the show as the showrunner, and that I need to go tomorrow to the office of the head of Touchstone, and he will explain to me what's going on. you know, we were late with some scripts, but it's nothing that doesn't have on every single show, especially the number 1 show, right? So I show up, go to Disney lot where ABC is, and I show up, and there's the big boss, a guy named Mark Pedowitz, nice guy, very nice guy. And I said to Mark, before we go, let me ask you, what do you do to the guy who gives you the number 2 show? Does he actually execute it? I mean, what do you want from me? And he said, we're giving the show to Stephen Bochco. And the thing is that Stephen Bochco, for those of you who do not know, is the most successful drama showrunner in television history. He worked on everything from Columbo to NYPD Blue and Hill Street Blues and so on. They had a number 1 show. They needed somebody really experienced running it. They said I was late with scripts, or you know, as I said, and they kicked me out. I was gone. And the show went from the number 1 new show to number 75 because I don't want to say too much about Mr. Bochco as he passed away and he cannot defend himself. But let's just say that we had very different visions of why we should have a female president. I did a show about why we should have a female president, and I think the end result was the show became why we shouldn't have one. And the women in the audience responded accordingly, and we got canceled. It was an unbelievable flame out.
It was disappointing. I used to love the show as a
Yeah,
junkie.
it was great, and Geena was amazing. She won the Golden Globe and was nominated for the Emmy, and it was a real shame. It was a real bummer.
Let me ask you this: as you were putting together the character, Geena Davis's character, you know, here we are at the Clinton Library. I have to ask: was Hillary Clinton at all inspiration? She was a U.S. senator at the time, former first lady, and a potential at that time, 2005. People thought she'd be maybe running in 2008.
People thought she'd be running? That was a done deal. How many people here who knew the Clintons didn't know that Hillary would be running?
I think people here knew
2005.
since the 70s or 80s that she was be running for president.
Everybody knew, you know. Yeah, I mean, all the speculation, when the show was a hit, all the speculation came out that I was shilling for Hillary Clinton. And I really wasn't at all. I was shilling for a woman president. You know, and she was probably the most logical person, but I wasn't. It was not specifically about her at all. At the first time, we did a massive press conference with all the reporters across the country, television reporters across the country, and the first question out of the gate was so aggressive toward me about how you hate Republicans and such an obvious. Such an obvious campaign commercial for Hillary Clinton, and I said, it's really not. I don't want to get the audience comfortable with Hillary as president. I want to get the audience comfortable with 2 words: Madam President. And I thought if that could enter the zeitgeist a little bit, I did want that. If that could enter the zeitgeist, then it wouldn't make it so difficult, because it turns out that this country is doesn't seem to be ready for a woman president for whatever reason. Well, I know the reasons, or have my opinions, but they don't want a woman president right now. It's the unfamiliarity with it. And I thought that maybe if every week they heard the term Madam President, that might help. Now, what has happened since my show? That was the first time since the 1960s there was a woman president on screen. That was, God darn, it was the name will come back to me. In fact, the woman who played that first female president came in to play Gina's mother on Commander-in-Chief. And, but since then, you almost can't have a white man as president in the movies. You can't. Like, the other day we were watching 0 Day, my wife and I, and we hadn't seen who was playing the president. And I said, I can tell you who it's not going to be. It's not going to be, you know, a regular white guy. It's going to be a woman. It's going to be a black man. It's going to be an Asian man. And then the president comes in, it's Angela Bassett, who I've worked with. She's wonderful. In fact, she was one of the people I wanted to have be in my movie. And my next movie is going to be about a female president. But but Hollywood, and there's another presidential movie coming out very soon with Viola Davis playing the president. So if you're not going to get a huge movie star like Harrison Ford, as you brought up before, then they're going to tackle these things. And again, these are aspirational. What we're talking about. It's what we were talking about before. We're looking for what we aspire for in a president. Right now, personally, I'm really aspiring for a woman or a person of color or a gay man or a gay woman or a Jewish man or something that just says that we as a country are expanding. It's important to me. May not be important to everybody. Important to me. But that's what it's, now we'll see right now there's this whole rejection of what this administration calls DEI, or they've turned it into a bad word. And so we'll see whether or not the movies continue to do that. We'll see if the movies are going to take the lead or be led in the future.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens. Let me ask you this: as a director, you've directed Kevin Pollak as president,
Yes.
Jeff Bridges as president,
Yes.
Geena Davis,
Yes.
Joan Allen as the senator, vice president elect, and then Tim Matheson in Killing Reagan as Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
As a director, are there any tips or advice you give to your actors, like how do you appear presidential?
Well, you know what's really interesting is that when Geena was getting advice on how to play the president, Madeleine Albright, you guys know her too, right? Of course you do. Okay. Do you guys know Al Gore too? Yeah.
They've had lunch with these people. I mean, this is a little wrong.
This is really crazy. This is just, I can't wait to journal about this tonight. This is really nuts. Madeleine Albright told Geena, "You're the president. Walk in the room and speak. You don't need to come in. You don't need to be commanding. You don't need to be gruff. You don't need to pound your fist down." She says, "The president is the president is the president," and that was and Geena took that really took that to heart. When she sits down, everyone quiets down, and she speaks, and she is the president. Now, when you're doing a real life president, you've got a ton of stuff. We had a lot of people. I did this movie called Killing Reagan for National Geographic. It's based on a book by Bill O'Reilly. We did it before all that stuff came out, and that really hurt the film, really unfortunately, because Tim Matheson, did anybody see Killing Reagan? No, I didn't think so. If you guys can see it, it's very nonpartisan. It's about the assassination attempt on him, and I'm really, really proud of it, and Tim is fantastic. Really fantastic in it. When we did the scene where he goes and speaks before the Congress, he walks in, and I told everybody, all 400 extras, to start yelling, "Toga, toga," which was a lot of fun. National Lampoon's Animal House. But he was really great, and Cynthia Nixon she was really great as well. But also Will Lyman played the president, and Commander-in-Chief played the president who passes away. So I've had a, and I did a, this is so funny, man. I did a pilot that never got on the air, and I had a president in that one as well. And I built an Oval Office, and I'll tell you who played the president, Peter Fonda. Do you guys know who Peter Fonda is? He's a total hippie. God bless him, he's gone now. But this guy was stoned every single day we shot, and he walked like the Pink Panther, and he was just. I was like, oh, Catherine Ross played his wife, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I'll tell you a story. I'm sorry, I know
We're here for you.
I know I'm totally meandering, but at the end of, has anybody seen The Contender? Yeah, okay, good. So. If you haven't, shame on you. But I think you'll like it. I think it's a good movie. At the end, Jeff Bridges is going to give a huge speech, right? Big speech, hundreds of people. And I rented out the Virginia State House for one day, and it cost us a lot of money. One day, hundreds of extras. We're paying all of them We can't go beyond this day. And it's a hard, you need to be out by such and such a time, and that's it. And so they've gathered these hundreds of extras. And Jeff is in his trailer, and he won't come out. It happens. The star won't come out. So you send the intern to get him, no luck. You send the second, my assistant director in, no luck. You send the producers, finally say, Mr. Director, you got to go get your star. So I said, okay. And I knock on the door, and the door opens, and I was blown back by this huge cloud of marijuana. And I mean, I literally had not had a full drink, and I had one drink in my whole life when I had my bris. The rabbi gave me some wine. Okay? And I've definitely not done marijuana, nothing. But this thing blew me backwards. And Jeff comes out, what's up, man? I said, Jeff, you got a 3-page speech to give. He goes, oh, yeah. All right, I'll be right there. So he puts on it's funny watching him put on his costume. You know how a stone person puts on clothes. And I'm going, oh my God, we're so screwed. We're dead. That's my second movie. I'm never going to work again. And Jeff is going, hey, man. He says, have you had the cobbler at Emily Shaw's in Pound Ridge, man? That food is so good. I go, Jeff, do you know your lines? He goes, what lines? I said, you're giving the speech. And then we get to the room, and he walks in, and he sees all people. He goes, dude, there are a lot of people here. I mean, I said, yeah, there's your lectern. Luckily, I got this on teleprompter, yeah. And then he says to me, okay, can you give this speech to everyone so I can hear how you want it done? By the way, actors never tell the director, show me how it's done. But I could tell he needed a second. And so I do it. He goes, okay, let me try. Let me try. And I say, okay, and action. And then boom, he completely changes, becomes super presidential, gives the speech, nails it in one. Half a year later, and the nominees are Jeff Bridges in The Contender. And it was the most amazing thing that I had ever seen. He's the most wonderful guy in the world, but the most beautiful oddball you'll ever meet. I mean, he's a great guy to have as a friend, but he really scared me.
That's great. That's a great story. Let me ask you this. I talked about those actors you cast as presidents in past projects. What is your dream casting of a president? If you do another film with a presidential character, like money and schedule, not an object, who is that person going to be?
Well, what actor would I specifically? What actor? I mean,
or you can list a couple if you want to.
Michael, it really depends. Do I want a bad guy president? Do I want a good guy president? I'd love to work with Kevin Costner. I think he's amazing. Mm-hmm. If I want to get a younger guy, I love the idea of Jake Gyllenhaal. I love Lupita Nyong'o. She's Viola, but she's now going to play the president. The first person I was going to do my Virginia Woolf one was Vera Farmiga. I don't know if you know who she is. She's wonderful. It's interesting how many British people have played American presidents.
Anthony Hopkins and
Daniel Day-Lewis. They come to mind immediately. Yeah. Kevin Kline, he was great in Dave. Michael Douglas was great in The American President.
Yeah, two of my favorites.
Yeah, well, they should be. They're fantastic films.
Yeah.
They're absolutely fantastic films.
It's more of a philosophical question. In a room this size, without putting anybody on the spot, there's somebody here who's never seen one of your movies. That just happens, right? In a room this size.
Well, they haven't seen any of my movies, apparently.
But before they were to see
they will, though, right? Okay.
Before they were to see The Contender or something else, what is one movie that's not yours that you would recommend that kind of shows your style or your ethos or your frame of reference?
Well, you're asking what has influenced me, and if you want to look presidentially, There's a movie by Sidney Lumet called Failsafe. Henry, do you know it? Henry Fonda as the president. It's sublime. He was my favorite director of actors. And that to me, Failsafe is great. 7 Days in May.
Kirk Douglas, yeah.
Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster and Frederick March. That's pretty great. And and I would say Michael Douglas, the American President. The movie that most influenced, like The Contender, was All the President's Men. That influenced many directors of my generation. That movie, probably.
Speaking of directors, I like asking this question: what directors do you steal blatantly from?
Do I steal from?
Yeah, like great artists steal. So there's things that you've like, I want to use this, or I want to do this. Who are some of the people that really?
Well, I mean, definitely Alan Pakula and All the President's Men really influenced The Contender. So the Contender, and this, I'll get back to what you were saying. The Contender was an independent film. I shot for like $8 million. We raised it in Germany. And so we're showing the film around town, and there were a couple of offers on it. New Line wanted it, Miramax, Harvey Weinstein wanted it. And Harvey Weinstein offered me $6 million, offered my group $6 million for the American rights. And we were about to sign with him, and I get a phone call saying that Steven Spielberg has heard about your film. His mom wants to see it. He's going to show it to his mom at his house. Can he get it? And we said, sure. And then I get a phone call that says, after he watches it, Steven's going to call you. So I went and told my wife, my then wife. I got to keep saying then wife because I got a new wife and she's amazing. Okay? Sorry. So I told my then wife, we're not going out tonight. You're going to wait for Steven's call and put on Schindler's List so he hears it on the background when he calls. And then the guy never called. And I thought, he's the greatest living filmmaker. Of course he's not going to call after seeing my little piece of shit movie. Okay, that's too complicated. It's a four-letter word. Okay. Anyway, he never called. But then we get a call the next day from his business affairs to tell us that he loved the film and he wants to buy it for DreamWorks. And he's going to offer me $5 million for it, which is $1 million less than Harvey offered. And so they said to me, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I had to decide, who do I want to be in the editing room with? And I chose Steven Spielberg. It cost me, I told Steven, you just cost me $1 million, buddy, but I'm going to take it. And then he hired me to do The Last Castle. And we were in the editing room. He helps me re-edit The Contender. He gave me a lot of advice on it. And then on The Last Castle, he helped storyboard some of my scenes for me. And I must say that Spielberg is a master at doing these one-ers, what we call one-ers, meaning the camera doesn't cut from person to person to person. We do a whole scene in one shot. It's all over Jaws, for example. And he taught me how to do that. And so I steal from my mentor, Steven Spielberg. And I'm very proud to say that he's very much my mentor. There was a woman, an actress in The Contender that I was crazy about. Everyone fell in love with her. And her name was Kathy. And I'm in the editing room with Spielberg, and he goes, who is that actor? And I said, that's Kathy Morris. And he goes, 1 second. He gets on the phone in my presence. He's casting the movie AI, Artificial Intelligence. And he says to his casting director, who is Kathy Morris? And, well, why don't I know about her? No, it doesn't have to audition. Just hire her to play this part in the movie. Boom.
She was Tom Cruise's wife in that.
In Minority, but I'm going to get to that in a second. So I said, holy shit, did this just happen? If I was single back then, this would have been very effective. I went outside and I called Kathy, and I'm admitting this on C-SPAN. Forgive me, Kathy. I said, Kathy, I'm in the editing room with Steven Spielberg right now, and I'm working really hard to cast you in this new movie. We'll see if this works or not. Boom. And that afternoon, I saw her on the lot. Oh my God, he hired me. She was so excited. Then he cut her out of that film, but then he made her Tom Cruise's wife in Minority Report. So I steal from Spielberg. I steal from Pakula. In the film, I just, on Monday, I'm locking my new movie. It's called Lucky Strike. It's a movie about the Battle of the Bulge.
I was going to ask you, what are you working on? Please tell us about
the Battle of the Bulge. And there I'm doing some grand theft larceny from like Edward Berger and All Quiet on the Western Front. But yeah. And then once in a while I'll come up with my own ideas, and hopefully they work.
That's awesome. As we kind of wrap up here, kind of put you on the spot because you've done movies with the president and you've watched countless ones with presidential depictions. Are there one or two that you just weren't that crazy about? Like, I just don't think this one was that great in terms of the depiction or the...
Yeah, that's kind of inappropriate for me to answer that, because I don't like to, especially if it's being televised, to go after my my peers. But what I don't, let me tell you what I don't like. What I don't like are biopics of presidents that are like really, really blatantly, I don't want to say partisan, but almost theologically in love with their character.
Yeah.
Like, there will be a couple of movies made about Trump by people that are like very much in that world. And you can be certain that actor will be 185 pounds, and maybe they'll try to get someone that looks like Costner to play him. And
An older Brad Pitt.
Yeah, and there's going to be great music, and that follows him or her around. But there've been a few movies like that where where the president is portrayed in a way that's like, I think probably inappropriate. I thought that Stephen's Lincoln was a terrific film and so on, but it has a very sort of evangelical feeling for Lincoln, and it might be interesting to see a much more wart-filled film than that one. The recent film about Reagan with Dennis Quaid
I was not a fan of that.
Okay, well, you're the critic.
I can say that. Nobody cares what I think in terms of Hollywood, but yeah, that one I thought
it's very reverential, and that's what I'm not a fan of. Although I do think the filmmakers have the right to have their points expressed, and in what they film.
Yeah, I saw that one. I didn't see Killing Reagan, but I've seen clips of Tim Matheson as Reagan.
Well,
he was great. He wasn't trying to do like a shtick or a
no. He's
impression.
really
he really, from the clips I was able to see, he seemed like really embodied.
I mean,
that
there's this fucking Bill O'Reilly. He's like, the things that he did that got him sued and had him having to pay off all these people, and it's just like all of a sudden I find myself associated with him in this film. And I remember he came to set one day and he said, this was in 2016, and it was right after the primaries, and he literally said, and I have witnesses to this, he said, if Donald Trump becomes president, I'm going to be running this country. Quote unquote, because he listens to me and only me. And when I heard that, I thought, oh my God, this guy, and we didn't use his book at all. His book is nonsense. We took the screenplay, we rewrote it, and just tried to follow the tick-tock of the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan. And I remember before I began it, O'Reilly gets on the phone with me and says, no liberal BS, okay, Lurie? And I said, we're just going to tell the truth, and we did.
My last question before we have to wrap up.
Yes.
Looking to the future of presidential fictions and the next, as you know, we talked about at lunch, sometimes it takes 2 years to get from writing a movie to getting it to the big screen. And you kind of alluded this a little bit in talking about Trump, but in our future depictions, do you see presidents that are going to be depicted as aspirational, hopeful, vindictive? I mean, what do you, in terms of our
You know what I think, honest to goodness? I think that because there's no more satire to put into these movies, I really mean that. There's no more satire. If you listen, even the most ardent fans of this guy will tell you that he's big and browsy and he speaks so nonsensically and rambles so much and is so brag. I mean, like, it's crazy. There's no more satire. I think we're going to have nothing but aspirational coming out. Like, how can we get out of this mess? Look, the young lady who introduced us said that I'm a proud father, and I am. But as of 2 months ago, I became a proud grandfather, and I never thought that would happen. But here it is, and I don't know what my grandson is gonna have in front of him. I hope we have elections coming up. I mean, real elections. I hope so, and I hope that in Hollywood we'll have the freedom to make the kind of movies that we've made. But honest to God, I really don't know. So, but
I like what you said. Hopefully, there will be some aspirational.
I mean, we're
more
going.
American President
I think it's going to be what we're going to have to do.
Yeah.
We need another West Wing.
Well, I hope you'll be making them.
I'm planning to.
Awesome.
I'm going to.
Awesome.
I'm going to. You guys are amazing. This is the coolest group I've ever spoken in front of, and I really appreciate it. And I'm honored that you came to hear me speak. I really am. That's really wonderful.
Rod, thank you so much for being with us this evening. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you guys very, very
Rod
much.
Lurie, thank you.
Thank you. It's okay. It's like this. That.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm very concerned about this. No, I'm not that concerned. Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Michael, for an entertaining, sometimes irreverent look at presidents in the movies and television. I'm Kathleen Pate. I'm Director of Education and Public Programs here at the Clinton Presidential Library. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. Really enjoyable program. We hope that you've had an opportunity to see Commanding the Screen, the American Presidency in Film. If you haven't, it's here through the end of the month. So thank you again, and let's give Rod and Michael another round of applause.